Our next speaker is going to be Kyle Paskewitz. I got it right this time. Kyle Paskewitz is Chairman and Executive Director of Parentlink, founder and family of Court Reform USA, and co-chair of the Washington Interagency Fatherhood Council, member of the Washington Early Learning Plan Steering Committee, and was the 2018 candidate for state representative. His mission is to better protect the fundamental rights of children, parents, and families who have child custody cases in family courts, and to support parental equality and judicial accountability. As an Army Ranger veteran, Kyle knows the importance of integrity, ethics, and dedication. Kyle?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the warm introduction. Enjoy purple. I heard that was one of your favorites.
Close. Blue, but I'll take purple.
All right. Well, I'm very proud and honored to be here. I see a lot of familiar faces. This is my 4th year coming to Washington, D.C. to support this cause. Got to meet a lot of people already this morning that I had interacted with for quite some time on social media. These are always really, really great events, and I thank Mark for putting this together and everybody else on the Americans for Equal Shared Parenting team who brought us all together here today. There's a couple of things that I'd like to talk to you guys about. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk specifically about legislation. That's primarily what I've been doing. This is my 5th year working on legislation in the state of Washington, and it's been quite an experience. I'm As I was introduced, I'm the chairman of Parentlink, which is a 501c3. I founded Family Court Reform USA, which is a 501c4. We work specifically on legislation. I've been in this fight for quite a while. I'm an adult child of divorce, and I'm an alienated parent. So this is an issue that really, really impacts me and impacts so many different people out there. And it's really taken a lot of work to get some of these legislators to understand this problem, and it takes a long time. Back in 2015 was originally when I first went down to Olympia, and having been through the family court system, I started to recognize all these different problems, and I figured, okay, well, I'm just going to go down to Olympia, I'm going to talk to some legislators, I'm going to tell them the problems that I identified, and they're going to want to fix it. And unfortunately, that's not how it works. I got down there, they actually already had a shared parenting bill. There was a sponsor, Chris Reichtel, he was a Democrat from Olympia. He had sponsored a bill, and that bill wasn't getting any kind of traction. So I started talking to a lot of people, started kind of organizing our support, tried to get a hearing for that particular bill, and they didn't want to hear it. They didn't even want to give it a hearing. So in 2017, I got another bill sponsored. We changed a little bit of the language. We got some pretty solid support for it. We have 9 different sponsors, but they were all Republicans. So the first bill was a Democrat-sponsored bill. The next bill was a Republican-sponsored bill, and it was all very divided. And unfortunately, we just couldn't seem to get any traction. For those that have worked on legislation before, there are committees that these bills have to go through, and these were both House bills. The House Judiciary Chair of that particular committee that was going to hear that bill just didn't support it, and that one person can essentially stop a bill from going forward. So after 2018, and we couldn't get any traction on that bill, couldn't get any support from the House Judiciary Chair, I decided to run against her for state representative. And unfortunately, I did not win that election. She's still our House Judiciary Chair. She's still holding that seat. But what that did do is it gave me a platform. And it gave me the opportunity to educate a lot of people in the state of Washington about the different issues that we were having. And it raised quite a bit of awareness. It got a lot of people talking to me about what it was that I felt needed to be done. It got a lot of the other organizations working together and talking about the issue of fatherlessness, the different problems that we have in the family court system. And so it was still, I believe, to be a very good move on our part, my organization's part, my part, to give us that platform and to get our voice out there and to get heard. So the bill that we were working on, and we have another bill that's sponsored now in the Senate. We've made a little bit of progress now because now we have a bipartisan bill. We have 3 Republicans and we have 2 Democratic senators all sponsoring this particular bill. The language in our bill is very, very strong, and I know there's different approaches and different, philosophies and how to get legislation passed, but I believe that this is a really, really big problem. I believe that we need to have very, very strong language if we're gonna get some traction and get people better protected in the family court system. And so what our bill essentially does is it establishes that it's in the best interest of children to have equal time with both parents. If one of those parents does not want to share time equally, it raises the standard of evidence to clear and convincing to deny them that equal time. And if that is a decision that's made by a judge, then it also requires that that judge document what evidence was considered to be true in order for them to make that decision. So it's faced a lot of resistance because it is a very, very strong bill. Anybody here who's worked on legislation or supported legislation knows that sometimes it's easier to get 1 or 2 of those clauses passed than it is to go for everything all at once. And I believe, we're going to continue to face challenges in Washington because we are taking kind of that harder line approach towards getting this legislation passed and what we believe needs to be done. So it's not necessarily advice on my part on what to do on your state, but this is what we're doing. I've noticed that in some other states, they've taken some of our language and incorporated that into their bills. There are several states, I've talked to several people recently that have got bills passed that are steps in the right direction. So I applaud anybody that's working on legislation and able to get something forward because what we're going for is a tremendous challenge. But we're going to continue to work towards that. So part of my approach has actually evolved a little bit recently, and what I've started to do, in addition to running for office, in addition to building these relationships with legislators, during all of this time over the last 4 years, 4 or 5 years now that I've been in this, I've met with probably 50 different legislators. I've brought hundreds of people down to the Capitol. We've raised awareness in that way, but we also need to raise awareness within some of these other circles, some of these other nonprofits, within the people that work in the state agencies. So I've been focusing on getting myself onto as many teams as possible. I'm now the co-chair of the Washington Interagency Fatherhood Council, which was a council that they just started last year. It's sponsored by our governor. We have a partnership between nonprofit organizations and all of the different state agencies who are going to be advising the governor on policy. I've applied for several other committees. I applied for a countywide committee that's the Birth to 25 Advisory Committee. They're going to be advising our county on policy. There's a statewide childhood advisory or child support advisory committee that I've applied to as well. By becoming the co-chair of the Fatherhood Council, I was also invited to be a member of the Early Learning Steering Plan Committee as well. And so all of these different groups meet regularly with the different state agencies and the different people that are very influential on policy. And so it gives us a seat at the table when they're planning, when they're making these recommendations to our legislatures, and when they're talking internally about what the problems are. It gives us that internal voice. And I've noticed by going to these different meetings and meeting with these folks, a lot of times, a lot of these parents aren't even on the radar at all. They have very specific focuses sometimes, and the voice of the average father, the alienated father, oftentimes those aren't being heard in those particular circles. So I believe that that's going to be a very effective way to continue to drive the change, to raise awareness, to educate the right people. One other thing I'd like to talk about, because I know my time is running very short here, and there's a million things that I could talk to you guys about today, but calls to action are extremely important. And I know that when we're trying to create social awareness, when we're trying to create social change, when we're trying to convince a legislator that they need to sponsor a bill or need to get behind a bill, we need to have volumes of people. We need to show that there's widespread support from many different organizations, many different circles. And one of the ways to do that is to get with these organizations, get with Americans for Equal Shared Parenting. I'm with Family Court Reform USA, you can register on our websites, and registering on the website puts you on the mailing list. It gets you alerted when there's a call to action. So whether we're doing a petition, or we're writing a letter, or we're meeting with a legislator, or we're holding a conference like this, being registered in that database is extremely important because you'll get the email. You can also share those with your friends in order to continue to spread the word, make people that aren't aware of what we're doing aware of the different events that are happening and what they can do to help. So I'd like to drive that point home. Please register on the Americans for Equal Shared Parenting website. Support your local organizations, support my organization, anybody who's out there that you feel is doing good work, please register on their websites. We've got to get off Facebook, and we've got to get to a forum where we can get those messages out quickly and organize people when we need them. So, looks like my time is up. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak, and thank you everyone for being here.